Okay, so biological, of course, we all know, physical, certain functions, so on and so forth. But at
Hmm.
a more spiritual level, these are just masculine, feminine behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Like when a man cries, it's feminine behavior. It's not that he's become a woman. And when a
Right.
woman defends her child from a predator, that's masculine behavior. Someone says, "Oh, who is the one person who's impacted your life?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you 10, but I can't think of one.
Yeah, there cannot be.
So it's a complete myth that there is anything that men can do and women can't do. In fact, there is nothing that men can do that women can't do better.
I agree.
I'm very clear about that. It's like when they say, I got your back, it doesn't necessarily mean that I got your back by standing in front of you.
Yeah.
I've got your back by standing behind you.
Have you ever been outsmarted by a woman?
Always. Always. I
Okay.
told you right in the start, women are smarter. They do things better. So
Well,
always
I kind of
outsmarted.
agree. Hi, Nikhil, and welcome to the About Her show. This is a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us, to tell us about their struggles, challenges, successes, all of that. Because we believe that women, they need a platform to showcase themselves. And by doing this, not only do they get to talk about themselves, but they also help us inspire other women. Women who are listening in have dreams, ambitions, passions, but somehow have not really paid heed to them. So we want them to get inspired. And along with women, we also get men on the show, men like you who champion women because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. And I have seen a little bit of your journey, how you are championing, various endeavors and enterprises by women. So I thought, why not get you and get your views on some of the topics that we feel are very, very critical for, gender equality. So a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you for having me. And I too have been following your work quite keenly for a few months now, actually. And I must congratulate you on the wonderful, podcasts and so many other things that you do, not just podcasts, your writings and everything. It's absolutely marvelous what you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And it's
So
an honor to come on your show and talk to you.
I think likewise.
Thank
So,
you.
all right. So let's get started with the first question. So if you could, just tell us a little bit about your early years, your childhood, and if you think that your experiences from those days, they helped you shape your approach to life and now, to wellness, which you are into at this point in time.
So I grew up in a small town called Meerut, which is very much in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my life, in fact, until college, I was living there. And, so we were a very cantonment town, so there was a lot of the army and we had a lot of the influence of the army in our lives. So, things like which we take for granted, but seem to have become something very difficult to find nowadays: discipline, respect,
Yeah.
honesty,
Hmm.
being authentic. These were very natural things that we were taught in those days, which seem to have become very difficult to come back nowadays for some
Yeah.
reason.
Right.
So, of course, those values I have carried forward because, they are they're an intrinsic part of me. And I don't think that's ever going to change. So definitely your childhood, and, I went to a all boys Catholic school. So the upbringing there is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Walk it off and, life happens and it's okay, nothing matters and so on and so forth. So you kind of learn from that. And of course, it makes you more resilient
Hmm.
because you have to, just if you fall, you get up and walk again. Nobody's going to come and pick you up, which
Right.
is also the reality of life. Of course, there's support and everything, but if you do fall and you do sort of, harm to yourself, at the end of the day, you have to heal yourself. People
Correct.
can support you, people can be with you, people can, help you, whatever you need done. But at the end of the day, you have to work on yourself, you have to heal yourself. So, although it's not always about physical injury, there are so many other traumas and, mental concerns and so on that you may have, which you have to cope with and deal with and heal from.
Hmm.
So I think those lessons have really helped and kind of made me tough in a way. So
Yeah.
while the respect and the concern and the grace taught us to be sensitive to other people, taught us to be, concerned about society at large and all, but the discipline and the toughness that we were brought up with also taught us to sort of, you know, dust it off and move on. So
Okay.
definitely these lessons stay with us. Sometimes we don't realize. I mean, now that you ask me these questions, I'm actually realizing that this is probably where it comes from. But
Yeah.
they do become a part of you. So the upbringing did has made a lot of difference to what I am today. And then, of course, my father was always very helpful. He was always helping people. I
Hmm.
mean, he was not, and not, I mean, my grandfather was more on the charity front and those kind of things. But my father did this. He enabled people, he kind of always helped people stand on their feet, that catch a fish and teach them to fish story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he was more the teach them to fish kind of person, which is something which I also like to do. I
Okay.
mean, that's more in my character than just giving people charity, which is also necessary. I'm not saying that that's not required, but
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can teach them to stand on their own two feet, then it's so much nicer.
Definitely. Definitely. All right. So I'm sure growing up, there must have been women in your life, like your mom, aunts, siblings, cousins, and no matter what, like you said, sometimes we pick up lessons, life lessons, which at that point we don't realize what we are learning or imbibing. But over a period of time, and especially when we grow up, we do sometimes figure out that this is what I learned from that particular woman in my life, my mom or my aunt, like I said. So if you were to look back and reflect on your life, do you think there were any life lessons or there are any life lessons that you've picked up from some of these women?
So, strangely enough, or rather quite simply, the lesson was that there was never any difference between men and women in our family.
Okay.
So, it was, I mean, of course. So, I have a slightly different approach towards this whole gender story.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that, it is not as simple as man and woman or male and female. There are two elements. There is a biological element and there is a spiritual element.
Okay.
Okay. So biological, of course, we all know, physical, certain functions, so on and so forth. But at
Hmm.
a more spiritual level, these are just masculine, feminine behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
Like when a man cries, it's feminine behavior. It's not that he's become a woman. And when a
Right.
woman defends her child from a predator, that's masculine behavior.
True.
So, we seem to have somewhere to simplify it, just turn it into one gender identity.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not like that's my view, and that's come from what I saw in my own house. That we have certain roles to play, but those roles should are not societal. Those roles are either biological or how one is supposed to behave, or what behaviors are attached to which gender. So
Hmm.
it's a little more complicated than just simple. This is men and this is women.
Correct. I
So,
agree.
so that's why when I look back, I realized that there was no difference in the way they were treated. I mean, of course, in those days, courtesies and, etiquettes and all were very important. So, of course, you opened the door for a lady, you let
Yeah.
the lady pass first, which I think is still important because it's a mark of respect. I
Okay.
don't see it as a gender thing because if somebody older than me is walking past, male or female, I'll still stand aside and let them pass.
Hmm.
It's a form of respect. It's not really something that you treat just because it's a man or a woman. That's my view. Maybe
Hmm.
unpopular, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So we've never learned to distinguish on the gender side as such that, oh, women are meant to play this role. No, I've never learned that in my whole life. Even in my career,
Hmm.
strangely,
Hmm.
although I've worked in, I was in hotels and I've worked in many hotels and with a lot of lady colleagues and stuff like that. But I have never, so, I mean, I know it happens. I'm not denying it that. So, for
Yeah.
example, when I read about these surveys which say that, oh, women are paid a lesser salary than men in a lot of jobs. And I go like, how? I mean, I've
It's true.
hired
But it's
hundreds
true.
of people in my life. I know. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, which
Yeah.
is why it's important to highlight.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying my view is that I've hired hundreds of people in my life.
Hmm.
And if the person is right for the job, the salary is what was offered. So I don't know how that works, but anyway,
Yeah.
it happens. I
Yeah.
completely acknowledge that, and I think it needs to be addressed and acknowledged and corrected.
Correct.
But I'm just saying what influenced my thought process.
Hmm.
So I don't really see these things as roles that men have to play this role and women have to play that role. And if you're a man and managing the house, that's fine. If
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
a woman and going out working while your man is managing the house, that's also fine.
Yeah.
Because me, these roles are not, I would not put them into gender buckets. It
Hmm.
happens. This is my personal view. I don't do it, and I really don't think it's right.
But from your observation of women around you, did you learn something which has helped you in your life?
So yeah, I mean, they were always competitive. They were always performing well. They were always, sort of doing well in whatever fields they were in. My mom used to work, so they were always doing well in whatever they've done. In a lot of fields, they were more successful than other men that I know.
Hmm.
So again, that also kind of set my thinking to the fact that there is no reason for this disparity to exist.
Okay.
It exists, but I don't see any reason for it to exist.
Right, right. Because you were probably raised in a manner where, it was like everything for everyone. So
Yeah,
it wasn't that because
yeah,
of male female difference, certain things were available to
correct,
you and not to the others. Okay.
correct. I mean, so again, I'm talking of UP in the 80s and all, where there were certain safety concerns and so on and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
forth. Yeah, that of course was there, but it was not something that was from within our family.
Got
It
it.
was something that was societal or nature of the beast.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, those things existed, but that was force majeure. I mean, there was
Mm.
no choice. We
Yeah.
couldn't control that.
Correct. Correct.
So, but I've seen, I mean, even in my early years, even in my career, I've always seen no reason for this disparity to exist. And I definitely think that this is something that has to go.
Correct.
It has to go. And it's something that, I mean, even when people are being recruited and all and so on, and if the person fits the role, if the person has the right knowledge and experience, it shouldn't matter. I mean, to me, it doesn't, but it also shouldn't matter what the gender is, frankly.
Right. Right. Right.
Uh,
Okay. So, like you said, you've worked with female colleagues, and of course, you've had women around you, and many times it happens that, we think about things in a particular way. We have a certain point of view, a certain perspective. But then here comes along someone who just changes our way of thinking, because they are looking at the situation with a fresh pair of eyes, different from us. So, have you ever faced any situation where a woman completely changed your perspective about something, whether it was life, work, health, anything at all?
yeah, so of course, I mean, not one, but many. I mean, I remember uh, well, she didn't sort of work with us, but she was a trainer, and we used to do a lot of programs with her in my early years.
Okay.
And she taught me. I mean, I could never look at work and relationships within work strategically.
Hmm.
I was very like everybody is my friend, work friend, this friend, that friend.
Okay.
That sometimes doesn't work. I
Yeah.
mean, the
That-
reality is that that's how life is. And I think she completely changed my view without making me cynical about people or disgusting about people. She
Hmm.
taught me how to evaluate people. She taught me how to, how to control conversation with different people, what to say, what not to say, how much to say. I learned that lesson and kind of carried the baton from there, and that helped me a lot because
Yeah.
as you grow in your business, you have to be very careful about the kind of people you work with, and how much you tell them. Don't whether we like it or not, it's a reality.
It is.
So yeah, that made a lot of difference. And then also looking at life more holistically, that has been a more recent sort of a learning, which again I've learned from a woman who kind of I follow, and I sort of respect her views a lot. So looking at life more holistically, looking at things in a different way,
Hmm.
looking at you know problems or concerns how to deal with them, how to manage them, rather than just going completely berserk and losing your control over things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, one again, it's not like one person who's taught you everything, and that's kind of my nature also. I don't really, someone says, "Oh, who is the one person who's impacted your life?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you 10, but I can't think of one.
Yeah, there cannot be
So,
one.
you learn. Nahi, hota hai, people have, this is my hero, this is my heroine, or whatever. I
Yeah,
don't
but I
have
also
that.
feel, hero maybe for some part of your life, but then if you look at your life in entirety, there will be so many people who would have influenced your life, impacted you in different
Precisely.
ways. So even I don't think that there can be only one person. There can be one main person, so to say, but cannot be the only person.
That's right.
My
Yeah,
view. All right.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, living in a world where we are surrounded by stereotypes, these beliefs and norms which have been carrying on for generations, and we kind of just accept them, normalize them, because that's the way it has been. Now, women, I feel, are more affected by these stereotypes because of, these gender roles and what can you do and you can't do and all of that. And there are, large number of misconceptions that also exist about women and what they can do in life. So again, if you were to look around you, what's that misconception, or rather the most common misconception that you've seen about women, and how have you approached it, or how have you dealt with it, or if it was a myth that you felt, how did you debunk it?
So, I always felt it was a myth, honestly,
Hmm.
because see, now there are certain, um, I mean, I hope I'm saying this right, but there are certain physical jobs that require uh, perhaps a gender differentiation, because that's how the biology is structured. It's nothing to do with what they are. It's just the
Right.
way, which is why we have two separate events in the Olympics, and even the teams compete. Male, female are separate, and so on, because there are certain biological um, elements that are definitely different. But when it comes to, for example, I mean, my work has always, we've never really had physical work to do, and I've always worked in more sort of cerebral roles.
Hmm.
So I don't, it's a complete myth that there is anything that men can do and women can't do. In fact, there is nothing that men can do that women can't do better.
I agree.
I mean, I'm very clear about that. Very
So
clear.
am
I
I.
have never ever,
So am I.
yeah, I have never ever believed otherwise,
Yeah.
because you know, so and you have to. I think one has to take small steps. Like for example, in the early or say around 2007, 8, when we opened a hotel in Bangalore, we didn't. So I'm a little um, not very comfortable with setting targets and saying, 30% should be women or 40%. I think that's a bit condescending,
Okay.
because you're assuming that more than 30% women will not get selected, which is silly.
Hmm.
If you go with an open mind and if you do it in all fairness, why would only 30% women get selected? I mean, they're
Okay.
50% of the population. So why would 30? So that's the way I approached it. So, but I realized that, you know, the women were actually delivering much better.
Hmm.
They were much more sincere.
Hmm.
Perhaps they also had a greater desire to prove themselves. Like you mentioned, there are certain societal sort of stereotypes, and therefore the women try to work harder to prove themselves. Perhaps, I
Hmm.
mean, I don't, that's something very within them. So it was never really discussed, but yeah, it used to happen. A lot of why people, even women managers, a lot of women managers also don't hire women. It's very hard to convince them, and I
Hmm.
think that's a big problem too. I don't think we really look at that very carefully, but that's a very big problem. A lot of the women managers are not fair to other women.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
reality,
Because again,
So
it's stereotypes. Again, that embedded thing that, she's a woman, she may not be, like because of various changes in her life. I mean, she gets married or she becomes a mother. So because of that, she may not be, as sincere to her work as, a man. So yeah, those things are there, of course. And that's, what we have to kind of
but Sangeeta, the thing is that when you hire a man, how do you know he's not going to have a heart attack
absolutely,
6 months later?
absolutely. Exactly.
I mean, it's not that have getting having a family. I mean, of course, you have to kind of sometimes you have to be practical and say that if the role demands a lot of time on your feet and the lady is expecting, then obviously medically it's not
Yeah,
safe for
yeah.
her to. Those are biological again.
I,
That has nothing to do with her ability to deliver on
I,
the job. And so yeah, of course. I mean, especially in my business in hotels, we don't have too many redundancies in the sense that we don't have backups for people.
hmm.
So if the lady actually goes on her maternity leave, we don't have people to replace her. Somebody else will do a job. So
Okay.
yeah, those things exist, but you can't run your business based on these occasional
I,
issues, no?
yeah, yeah,
In a career of, if the lady, if you're running a hotel for 5 years and the lady is manager is there, she'll have what, one, maybe two children and take 10 months off or whatever.
yeah,
But what about the balance 50 months?
yeah,
So you have to sort of understand. Like I said, if a man breaks his leg, he's also going away for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, no?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Right,
it's the same logic.
right.
So yeah, so I think it's a myth, complete myth, that women can't do what men can do and so on.
Hmm, hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I mean, so like I said, I really never sort of consciously said that you should hire women or anything of the sort. But if you leave it open and go beyond gender and look at what they bring to the table, I think
Yeah,
it happens automatically. So
yeah.
there was actually a phase in my last assignment, and we just decided to take a picture with me in the middle and the ladies on the management team on one side and the men on the other. And the
Hmm.
lady went till there and the men were till here. And it was not intentional. It was
Yeah.
not intentional at all. It just
Hmm.
happened.
It just happened.
And I realized that, if you just don't look at uh, what is irrelevant while hiring, women are, like I said, better to have than men
Yeah,
on
yeah.
your team.
I agree.
But
All right.
again, these things have to come, and that's why. Um, in fact, I had written also about a little post about this the other day, where we had this recent episode where someone said rather a terrible thing about working instead of being your wife and so on.
Oh,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
are all
That,
people.
yeah.
I mean, rightfully so, but the entire focus seemed to shift on the man rather than the issue.
Yes, yes,
No?
yes.
I mean, what has come out of it?
Hmm.
So by telling me or by shaming me, I may get sorted out, or I may not even get sorted out. I might just be more careful for the next 2 years or so and then go back to being what I am. But
Right.
how have you made any change?
Hmm.
What has changed? Who has sat down and said, let's do this over the next 10 years so that the 17, 18-year-olds now,
Hmm.
when they are in management and all, they don't think like this. Nothing,
Nothing, nothing.
you know.
Actually, I think
So
sometimes the reaction, is like so instant that, you lose track of the main issue and you just maybe focus on one
precisely,
little thing,
yeah,
which becomes like,
precisely.
which is highlighted and for the wrong reasons. And that's what everyone starts reacting to rather than looking at the actual issue. Yeah,
Correct. And
right.
these are see, when we talk of stereotypes, they are not something that has been set in the last 5 years or 10 years. No?
Yeah, yeah.
They're, I mean, for millennia, maybe it's coming down, and probably becoming better sometime, worse again, better than. So it's not something that you can change by just talking about it. You have to, act on it.
Yeah, definitely.
So in fact, in these things, my favorite line has always been, don't do things for effect, do them if they are effective. So
Yeah.
naam ke vaste, you put up some posters and say women should be equal. It's not going to happen.
No, 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 no.
You know? So
It's just that
yeah,
I feel that, the conversations have to start because, you kind of
absolutely.
have to make people aware. And then, of course, it has to be backed up by action. If you don't act,
Correct.
if you just keep talking, then it's of no use. You're just
I
kind of doing
agree
it
completely.
just for the effect. So, yeah, definitely. So, Nikhil, we live in a world, where mutual help, support are always needed, whether it's two women helping each other or men or a man and a woman. But what has normally been seen is that when a man has to support a woman, that they generally do it in two ways. Either it is like, a knight in shining armor that, okay, I'm here to, help you, support you, irrespective of what kind of support she wants. And the second is where they adopt a very condescending attitude that, okay, you couldn't do it or you can't do it because you are a woman. So when it comes to you, what kind of a role do you play, or what kind of a role do you think men should actually play?
Okay. So look, I mean, the second is completely out. There's no
Hmm.
way that I endorse the second option, the condescending one, in any sense whatsoever,
Yeah.
because that's really not sort of par for the course. The
Hmm.
first one, knight in shining armor, perhaps in certain situations, but cannot be your go-to approach.
Yeah.
Uh, so when, it's like when they say, I got your back, it doesn't necessarily mean that I got your back by standing in front of you.
Yeah.
I've got your back by standing behind you
Yes.
and coming out and standing in front of you when I feel that, or you ask me, or I feel that you are in imminent danger, that's which I can deal with at that point in time.
Okay.
So I think you have to have a very again, it's a equivalence approach where you can't say that. So, with men also, no, sometimes you have to come out and, so if a colleague is getting blasted by a boss, sometimes you need to come out and rescue him also from that situation.
Definitely.
But you don't look at it that, oh, man or woman. It's something which, again, it has to be gender neutral. It has to be more situation specific.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So, if uh, again, it's not something which I look at as when I help somebody that, oh, am I helping a woman or am I helping a man? If
Hmm.
I can do it and the person is willing to accept it, you know, there are a lot of people, men or women, who are not good at accepting.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
go there, think of it as a weakness. So again, it's nothing to do with gender. I think it's just very individual. It's
Hmm.
very personal. And of course, it depends on your relationship with that person,
Yeah.
your understanding, if you're friends or if you're partners or colleagues or whatever, you do have a little bit of understanding of what they like, what they don't like. So rather than imposing your view while helping them, do it in a way that is empathetic to the way they like it.
Right. Right.
You know,
That is so
there are
true.
people sorry.
Just saying that, many times what happens is that, I may be overburdened with something and I just need someone to hear me out. I am not
Yeah.
asking for any solution to any problem. But it's been seen that, generally speaking, men feel that when a woman is saying something, she's looking to find an answer. No, she's not. She's just unburdening herself, and that's it. And once I'm done that, then probably, after that, the problem doesn't even exist. So I think, like you said, you have to understand what that person wants,
Yeah. So
right?
you know what? So also I think um, understanding the sensitivities of the person is very important. I mean, I
Yeah.
would not offer help to someone that I know nothing about in any case, because you never know what is it that you're looking for, help or otherwise. So
Hmm.
you have to err on the side of caution. But if you know that somebody, uh, if you know somebody and you know that they are unburdening or they're asking for help, I think you figure it out. And
You
again,
should
it's
be
not
able
really
to.
should be able to. It's not something which is man or woman or anything. Maybe because you see, also what happens is that, I mean, and I'm not saying that that attitude is right, but what I'm saying is that also, men are taught not to ask for help.
Yeah.
So when we are asked for help, we feel like if I need help with something, I may not be comfortable asking anybody for it.
Hmm.
Uh, but I want it.
Yeah.
I desperately want it. And then when somebody asks me, I'm also thinking, heck, he or she is like me and she needs help, but she's not asking for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
before I help. So, there's a lot of stuff that goes on.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, I mean, like I said, one has to be sensitive to the other person's need at
Yeah.
that time. But
Yes.
there may be a lot of other things that play a role, not just a man woman kind of a dynamic.
Correct. Correct.
So
To be able to
yeah,
assess the situation and then, respond accordingly, rise up to it
yeah,
accordingly.
you
Okay.
can't you can't do anything to obviously hurt the self-respect of the person. So you have to
Absolutely.
be very careful about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Nikhil, we see a lot of people doing this nowadays. You've done it. I've partially done it, which is, just making these bold career moves in the middle of our lives. Okay. So while you, of course, have switched, I haven't switched. I continue to teach, which was my first, what should I say, passion. It continues to be. But then I've taken on other stuff. And then when we look around us, we see a lot of people are doing this. And I like to call it midlife rebooting. You know, that in your
Mhm.
midlife, you suddenly realize that, okay, I want to do this and I want to do that. So what are your views on it? And why is it that people nowadays are doing more of this as compared to the earlier generations? I mean, I never knew of anyone in my parents' time, who thought of doing like a doctor, starting to write or something. It was happened very rarely. So what are your views on it?
So, I mean, I kind of, this was not part of the agenda. I had to do it because I fell ill and, I wasn't able to work for a bit of time. And then when I came back, I decided I wanted to do my own thing and not really, work for anyone. But, I think why it was not done in the past is simply opportunity. I mean, we didn't take this call 15 or 20 years ago either, right?
Right.
So it was opportunity, the availability of uh, ways to do things, the via media, the opportunities to create new careers for ourselves. I mean, all this never existed maybe even 10 years ago
Hmm.
or 15 years ago. I think now that opportunity is there. Especially, I think this work from home and all that changed a lot of the way people think because
Correct.
you realize that you have time to do stuff that fulfills you more
Hmm.
rather than just do your job, which is kind of putting food on your table or whatever. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
desire to work is different or need to work is different.
Right.
So I think the reason why it's more so now is the opportunity. I
Hmm.
mean, if you look at even things like social media management and all, which are much younger demographic is doing,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, they are moonlighting, I think it's called, when so all that is available to them. They are, they can do freelance work and stuff like that because those tools exist and that need exists now.
Right. Right.
So yeah, like in my case, like I said, I was sort of, my hand was forced because I was doing quite okay. I mean, I was happy with my career,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, but so also I felt that at some point. Uh, you have to take a call on what are your priorities, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So, if you have fulfilled your priorities of financial requirements, of having achieved a certain, you may not have achieved. I mean, we all want, like, when we start out, we all want to become CEOs at some point. Maybe I didn't become a CEO, but I had achieved pretty much what I wanted to do in terms of job fulfillment. I mean, I had been there, done that kind of thing.
Right.
So once you have that, and once you have a plan, a
Hmm.
lot of people make this mistake of doing this without a plan,
Yeah.
or they go in saying "dekha jayega." That is not good. I never encourage people to do that
Hmm.
because you have to have a certain logic behind what you are doing.
Right.
And that is why, I'm not a very big fan of all these stories about, oh, Bill Gates dropped out of college and became a billionaire.
Yeah.
These
Yeah.
are outliers. I'm not saying you can't be, but please be practical about it. Think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't just do it because Bill Gates did it and became a success, because he's one in like 10 billion people
Yeah.
or 8 billion, whatever the population of the world is. So, you know, I think once you plan yourself properly, if you have a backup, maybe a nest egg, and say that, listen, I've saved so much. This will see me through 2 years or 3 years. If I invested, it will see me through 4 years. Give yourself that time. Have a plan. Have a good sort of a business
Hmm.
idea. Know what you're going to do. Then you're okay to do it. But just doing it for the sake of doing it, I don't
No,
know. I'm not
definitely.
a.
I
Yeah,
think
a lot of people do that also. They just take a leap of faith.
yeah, you
So
can't always do it. I mean, you have to have some bit of, research and some bit of security to be able to do it. And then, of
right.
course, now there is a greater awareness in terms of, on social media, you see people are doing, you understand what are the options available. You can do this and you can do that. So all that is there. But again, you have to take a call, which is based on some facts and figures. You just can't kind of randomly, take that leap of faith.
I
Okay.
agree. Yeah.
Okay. So, Nikhil, if you could step into the shoes of a remarkable woman for a day, who would it be? And what part of
Oh,
her
yeah,
life
then you're
would
asking me to choose a hero.
And
That's
what
not
part of
fair. I
her
just
life?
finished telling you I don't do heroes.
No, but that's a question you have to answer. And what part of her life would you like to experience? So there's
So
this wide open world in front of you. You can pick up anyone.
yeah, so I mean, I don't know because I've never found anybody to completely be what I would like to be, So it's very hard because I mean there is an empathetic side of mine who may choose somebody who's more in service.
Okay.
There is a certain business person in me who's very cutting edge or whatever would choose somebody who's
Okay.
so it's very hard to say that, oh, this is the one choose. But if I have to describe the personality, it would be uh, you know I don't know. Maybe someone like, Kiran Shaw, for example, a very successful woman, does
Yeah.
a lot of social sort of, causes.
Yeah.
Very, really wonderful person. I've met her a few times because when I used to run a hotel in Bangalore,
Hmm.
very sort of humble and nice person and such an influencer. I mean, in
Yeah.
real terms, not social media influencer, but in the real world, she's made so much of a difference to life. And she's faced losses. She's
Yeah.
faced a lot of harassment from authorities and all over the years. But she stood strong and I mean, look at what Biocon is today.
Of course. Yeah.
So if I have to choose one, then probably someone like her. I don't know her. I mean, I don't know her personally, so it's hard
Yeah.
for me to
Yeah.
say
I
that
get that.
I want to be in her shoes. But yeah, someone like her for sure. Somebody who makes a difference.
Yes, I agree.
That would
Somebody who's made
probably
an
be
impact.
the
Yeah.
key key word here. Somebody who makes a difference.
Correct. All right. Now, again, I mean, this is a woman-centric podcast, so questions are about
Of
women,
course,
and
happy to hear that.
yeah. All
It's
right.
making me think, when I hear your questions, they're really sort of making me think. So that's nice.
All right. So, women are known to have these amazing multitasking abilities. I mean, I'm not saying whether they're good or bad. I mean, I'm not personally a big fan because I think when you believe that you can do 100 things at one time, you're actually putting it into yourself, you're putting yourself under a lot of pressure and it's not easy. So I've been there, done that, and wiser now where I only try to handle as much as I can. I mean, there were days when I felt that, okay, Wonder Woman, I can do everything, but nobody is Wonder anything. But yet
Mm.
we do multitask and we are doing two, three things at the same time. So, what has been the most, say, inspiring or memorable example of this that you have seen around you? Any colleague of yours, who's doing this, or someone in your family, or something like that?
Oh yeah, I mean many, Sangeeta. I mean, there's again not one because again, my most of my experience, or rather all of it, is really in hotels. So I understand how life is there.
Hmm.
And for a woman, beyond a point, a hotel business is very difficult. There's no doubt about that. Once you get married and especially when they have kids, it is a very hard. Not so much, not necessarily only from the work point of view, but from the emotional point of view. These are long working hours. They're odd working hours. Weekends and holidays, you end up working a lot.
Hmm.
So, the kids are at home either with the father or with whoever the caretaker is. So it's not easy on them. I completely this thing. But also I have found that I mean there are many. There are two or three I can think of straight away. There's a lady who heads a very large hotel chain in India who's not only battled illness, she's also battled not battled, but she's gone through this whole process of her husband being married, having kids, and
Hmm.
yet built her own career. And she heads a very large hotel chain in India now.
Hmm.
So there are people like that, and I mean they're amazing. These women, what they've done.
Hmm.
Um, but again, the same thing is that it's a uh, it's how they take it up and how the people around them take it up.
Yeah.
So, for example, a lot of these women that I can think of straight away decided that the woman's career would be given priority and the husband was doing something out of home or something that didn't require travel or whatever. All the women I can think of who've done well
Hmm.
have supporting partners,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So the husband took care of the kids and looked after the house and whatever, and
Hmm.
the lady built her career.
Yeah.
So I've seen many people like that in my business, and we've had the one of the presidents of my last not the last company, but the first one I worked for was a woman.
Okay.
Like I said, this lady who heads the hotel chain in India, I mean, she's a brilliant hotelier.
Mm,
Everybody looks up to her, and she's very focused on women in hotels, and so
mm.
she's giving back from her learnings.
Okay.
Uh, Not many women do that, but she's actually making an effort.
Mm, mm.
So there are a lot of women who've done that, and they've done admirably well. But I think it's really about the support system also. Again, for men also.
Of
I mean,
course, everybody
if
needs
if
that.
I have to as a man go to work, come back, look after the house, look after the kids, it's a chore for men and women. So it's just about the support system, really.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right. So on a light-hearted note, have you ever been outsmarted by a woman?
Always. Always. I
Oh,
told you right in the start, women are smarter. They do things better. So
well,
always
I kind of
outsmarted.
agree. All right. I will not dispute that.
There
Okay.
you go. Yeah.
Okay. So, again, like making families work, societies work, men and women play their roles, and we need both of them to play their roles for everything to function normally. But despite that, we do know, that women's contributions, or you could say what they do, you know, are not always recognized or appreciated by society, sometimes overlooked also. Have you ever noticed any such thing about these women that, they were doing so much, but, they did not get their due or the recognition or acknowledgement that was their due, they didn't get it?
So the only time I have noticed this is because for whatever reason, and again, I'm not saying because they are women or whatever, but their circumstances did not allow them to leave a comfort zone.
Yeah.
So for example, if we were in an organization and there was a man and a woman who were not being recognized, the man would either take it up or leave. But
Hmm.
I've seen women who stuck around because it kind of worked for them in their overall scenario. And
Okay.
that's something which I personally didn't sort of like that situation very much,
Hmm.
because it was again a disparity. Why should this guy be able to get up and go away and this lady have to struggle just because her situation didn't allow her to look for something else or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've seen that, and definitely it exists, no doubt about that. I mean, it exists with men also, but with women, I have seen that because uh, the again there are a lot of things like parents don't want you to go away far from home.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Maybe you living in a city which is not safe for women, or trying to move to a city which is not safe for women. So there are many factors. It's not always just a gender divide. I
Hmm.
agree they're not nice factors, but they exist.
Hmm.
uh, yeah, I've seen that 100%. It happens.
Okay.
And which is something that again was a learning for me when I was a younger manager, because I couldn't influence other people's lives. But
Hmm.
when I was in a position that I could, I did make at least try hard not to allow that to happen,
Okay.
you know. And also, Sangeeta, it's very, it, it's the way people are brought up. We were talking about the societal change again.
Hmm.
घर में क्या होता है? That's the way, like that the woman has also, she's a product of her environment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So घर में क्या होता है also translates itself to work पे क्या होता है.
Right.
So you have to, a lot of time there, of course, that is changing, and thankfully so, but there were times when the women also were not that vocal about
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what they were doing, right? And what they were contributing, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
therefore losing out. So lot of things, but
Yeah.
it did happen, and it needs to change,
True.
I think. And again, that will come from when we stop thinking of our teams as gender specific or whatever.
Right.
If a team is a team is a team, and man reacts, a woman reacts,
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Right. 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 All right. So finally, we read these quotes and, people say these things, which we sometimes, they resonate with us and we like what somebody has said. Has there ever been any empowering quote by a woman that resonated with you? Whether in terms of life, approach to life, wellness, anything at all?
So you know, I'm not good at remembering quotes per se, but
Yeah.
there was uh, there was something akin to this that Oprah Winfrey once said. When
Mm.
somebody asked her that why did you? She had a very tough life initially, right? Before she
Yeah.
became famous, she had a very difficult life, and she always used to say that I had a tough life because I didn't leave when I should have.
Yeah.
And I think that is such a brilliant thing to say that
Yes.
sometimes we comfort zone, wala, what we were
Yes.
saying, that we just feel that this is the what we deserve, this is the best we can get, and if we move out of this situation, everything's going to fall apart.
Hmm.
So just by not leaving at the right time, she said that my whole life was miserable because I didn't leave at the right time. And I
Yeah.
think that I don't remember the exact words, but
Oh,
that's
that's
what
fine.
they.
But yeah, I know what you're saying. So
So
yeah,
I think that was something also because I mean, interestingly, I met her a couple of times, and
oh, nice.
we
Okay.
I know we got, so she didn't use the quote on me that time or tell me the quote that time, but we got talking about how she became famous,
Hmm.
and she mentioned that, oh, I had a very difficult life before I became famous, but then I did this, and life changed and so on. So when I read that quote, I kind of related it to that conversation. So
Okay.
that's why it had a greater impact on me than some of the others.
No, but it's so true. Sometimes you're not just, you're not able to break away from a situation which is maybe toxic, which is maybe, not doing you any good. On the contrary, it is harming you in many ways. But, like you said, you don't want to break away from that comfort zone, but it is so, so critical to be able to do that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Nikhil, the conversation cannot be over without the rapid fire round. So,
Now I'm scared.
no, five
I'm just kidding.
quick questions, five quick answers. Nice
Mhm.
questions. First
Sure. Okay.
one. One hotel experience you will never forget.
So it was a very weird experience, but in one of the hotels that I was working in, the light bulb burst in an actress's room.
Oops.
And
Okay.
unfortunately, she was standing very close to it. And as you know, her looks are
Of
very
course.
important in that space. So that was quite a task to sort out. And I was kind of the number two in that hotel. So it fell on me. And
All
I had
right.
a tough time. I won't name the person, but she was very
That's,
tough on me.
but
I
I
can
can
remember
totally
it.
imagine,
and,
what you must.
and I completely empathize with her because that's her profession.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
So yeah, so I'll just decided to.
Okay. Maybe it got dazzled by her personality and decided to
That
go.
was kind of the tack I took initially, but she wasn't amused, so I had to
All
change
right.
very
Okay.
quickly.
All right. So the next question, a wellness mantra that you swear by.
So I think balance and harmony. I think these are the two things one has to always remember. Balance because I mean we all know you have to balance all the aspects of your life. They will exist. You can
Hmm.
sit and grumble and complain about them or learn how to balance them. And harmony because life is a cycle. There is no one activity that is going to be continuous. No one emotion that is going to be continuous. No one period of good or bad that's going to be continuous. So if you're able to harmonize your cycles and if you are able to find balance in what you do, I
Yeah,
think that's about it. Everything else follows.
very well said. Balance and harmony. All right. Next
Thank
one.
you.
What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
So, I mean, on a lighter note, I've taken a very conscious decision not to have long days. So
Okay.
I'm managing that pretty well. But so I like my unwind is where I can use my brain. I mean, I just like to use my mind. I don't like my mind to be idle at any point in time.
Okay.
So I do a lot of research on subjects. I try to learn things about different businesses.
Okay.
I try to find different ways of doing things, different opportunities, not related to business, but just seeing what's happening in the world. So
Okay.
for want of a better word, maybe research. I love doing research.
Okay.
Not scientific, but yeah, just reading. I watch a lot of variety of stuff on YouTube.
Okay.
So just as long as my mind is doing something which is new, which is different, I
Mm,
find that very relaxing.
great. All right. Next question. If not hospitality or wellness, what would you do?
So when I was young, I wanted to be a pilot,
Oh, okay.
but my eyes kind of ditched me, and I started wearing spectacles at a fairly young age.
All right.
So that kind of ditched me. But I've never thought of doing anything except hotels. And the fun part is that my education is not in hotels.
Okay.
I'm actually a graduate in mathematics, if
Oh,
you please.
all right.
Yeah, that was my major in college.
Oh,
And yeah, and then I joined hotels, but I never thought of doing anything but hotels all my life. And the wellness that I do is actually for hospitality. So
yeah.
even now I'm
Kind of
very
related.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So the final question, now you're into wellness and physical fitness is a part of it, right?
Okay.
So if you have to choose between yoga or Pilates, what would you choose? Or what would you
Yoga,
recommend? Yoga? Not
yoga, always. No, I'll tell you why. Because, yoga is not a form of exercise. It
okay.
gives you exercise, but yoga is about the mind.
Hmm.
Everything that you're doing with the body is basically to unclutter the mind.
Okay.
So yoga actually is, of course, it gives you the asanas, give you physical sort of strength and stability and balance.
Hmm.
But everything that you do is focused on the mind. So actually, it's two birds with one stone.
Okay. And you don't think you do that in Pilates?
No, not really. It's more focused on exercise.
All right. Okay. I'll agree
But
with
that's my personal view.
Okay.
With no offense to anybody who does Pilates or is a Pilates instructor.
All right. We'll take
Let
this
me add that
conversation
caveat.
offline.
Please don't delete this caveat.
All right. So,
Yeah.
okay, Nikhil, that was actually a very, very delightful conversation. I mean, like your perspectives, your views, very balanced and very practical and very open and flexible, which is, why I thought you would be the perfect fit for this show. And I'm so glad I'm not wrong. So it's been
Thank
an
you so much.
absolute
So kind.
pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her show.